Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new episode of Death Church Radio and the Death Church Radio podcast. I do apologize for the sound of my voice. I've actually contacted the flu 2 days ago, and I'm still fighting it, but I actually feel a lot better than I did. So go ahead and listen to this like you listened to the last or the episode before the last one I made on going over comments where me and Pastor Doug Perry from Fellowship of the Martyrs were going at it on a couple of different subjects. But what we're going to be doing today, or what I'm going to do today, is go ahead and listen to this as a podcast episode. I'm going to be playing an hour's long worth of the book of Amos from the Old Testament. So this is the book of Amos for the ESV version, plus breakdown and study. The introduction on it that I found on Wikipedia notes that my girlfriend Rae has written on the book last night, and also from Vernon McGee that I found on the TTJ website. So, and I also throw my own commentary also myself. There's 9 chapters for this. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be walking periodically from here since I'm going live right now, because like I said in the video 2 weeks ago, it's a lot easier to just go live and just play the book of Amos, or actually just play anything off of my phone.
Hey, what's going on there?
It's actually a lot easier to just do it this way, as opposed to doing the breakdown on one of the websites that the Chrome lets me use. So anyways, this is an hour-long episode of the book of Amos, so go ahead and strap in. Just plug in your headphones and just listen to this as if it's a podcast without pictures. So let's go ahead and get started for the first 15 minutes, which is the introduction of the book of Amos that I found on Wikipedia.
Everyone, this is Pastor Sean, coming to you live from Death Church Radio podcast, and Sean C. Stuckey Show on Facebook. And this week, I've actually caught the flu Friday night. It's Sunday, and I'm still fighting it off, but I do feel a lot better than I did yesterday. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to go through the book of Amos from the Old Testament. And
sorry, guys, just remember that I did not put things on mute
episode
on my phone other than this.
Yeah, about an hour-long episode.
For notification.
I'm actually not going to be doing that much talking. I'm going to use the text-to-speech website here. And Rae, my girlfriend, has sent an email. Basically, I have a breakdown of the book of Amos that she wrote last night with main points, personal thoughts, how the chapters are broken down, and a synopsis and thoughts and stuff from the book. So we're actually going to go ahead and play we're going to read through the entire Wikipedia article, breaking down the entirety of the book of Amos, so you guys get a clear understanding, because I actually haven't read this book in many years. So let's go ahead and get started. Just to throw this out there, I'm probably not going to be talking that much when making this video. I am going to stop it to give my thoughts here and there. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, it's about to start. It's loading.
Christian Old Testament. Amos, Hebrew. Amos was one of the 12 minor.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started now.
In the Hebrew Bible and Christian Old Testament, Amos, Hebrew, Amos was one of the 12 minor prophets. An older contemporary of Isaiah. Amos was active c. 760-755 BCE during the rule of Kings Jeroboam II and Uzziah. 1. He was from the southern kingdom of Judah but preached in the northern kingdom of Israel. Amos wrote at a time of relative peace and prosperity, but also of neglect of Yahweh's laws. He spoke against an increased disparity between the very wealthy and the very poor. His major themes of social justice, God's omnipotence, and divine judgment became staples of prophecy. The book of Amos is attributed to him. Before becoming a prophet, Amos was a sheep herder and a sycamore fig farmer. 2. His prior professions and his claim, I am not a prophet nor son of a prophet. 7. 14. Indicate that Amos was not from the school of prophets, which Amos claims makes him a true prophet. Amos' declaration marks a turning point in the development of Old Testament prophecy. It is not mere chance that Hosea, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and almost all of the prophets give a significant coverage in the Hebrew Bible, give proof of all the story of their special calling. protest against the suspicion that they are professional prophets, because the latter discredited themselves by flattering national vanities and ignoring the misdeeds of prominent men. 3. The Bible speaks of his ministry and prophecies concluding around 762, 2 years before the earthquake that is spoken of in Amos 1. 2 years before the earthquake. 4. The prophet Zechariah was likely alluding to this same earthquake several centuries later. Zechariah 14. 5. And you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. 4. Though he came from the southern kingdom of Judah, Amos aimed his prophetic message at the northern kingdom of Israel, particularly the cities of Samaria and Bethel. 5. Jeroboam II, c. 781-741 BC, ruler of the northern kingdom, had rapidly conquered Syria, Moab, and Ammon, and thereby extended his dominions from the source of the Orontes on the north to the Dead Sea on the south. The whole northern empire had enjoyed a long period of peace and security marked by a revival of artistic and commercial development. Social corruption and the oppression of the poor and helpless were prevalent. Others, carried away by the free association with heathen peoples which resulted in conquest or commercial contact, went so far as to fuse with the Lord's worship that of pagan deities. 6. Amos is the first of the prophets to write down the messages he has received. He has always been admired for the purity of his language, his beauty of diction, and his poetic art. In all these respects he is Isaiah's spiritual progenitor. 3. What we know of Amos derives solely from the book that he himself authored. 7.
Actually, let's stop right there. I'm not sure what a progenitor is. Isaiah's spiritual progenitor. Hold on just one moment. I'm going to look this word up. Definition. A progenitor is a person or thing from which a person, animal, or plant is descended or originates an ancestor or parent. Okay, I see. A person who originates an artistic, political, or intellectual movement. Okay, I see. Okay, let's go ahead and continue.
Progenitor. 3. What we know of Amos derives solely from the book that he himself authored. 7. This makes it hard to know who the historical Amos truly was. Amos felt himself called to preach in Bethel, where there was a royal sanctuary, 713, and there to announce the fall of the reigning dynasty and of the northern kingdom. But he is denounced by the head priest Amaziah to King Jeroboam II, and is advised to leave the kingdom. There is no reason to doubt that he was actually forced to leave the northern kingdom and to return to his native country, being thus prevented from bringing his message to an end, and from reaching the ear of those to whom he was sent. He wrote instead. If they could not hear his messages, they could read them, and if his contemporaries refused to do so, following generations might still profit by them. No earlier instance of a literary prophet is known, but the example he gave was followed by others in an almost unbroken succession. It cannot be proved that Hosea knew the book of Amos, though there is no reason to doubt that he was acquainted with the latter's work and experiences. It is certain that Isaiah knew this book, for he follows and even imitates him in his early speeches. Compare Amos 5:21-24, 4, 6 FF, 5:18 with Isaiah 1:11-15, Amos 4, 7 FF with Isaiah 9, 7 FF, 3:12. Shane concludes that Amos wrote the record of his prophetical work at Jerusalem after his expulsion from the northern kingdom, and that he committed it to a circle of faithful followers residing there. 3. The apocryphal work The Lives of the Prophets records that Amos was killed by the son of Amaziah, priest of Bethel. It further states that before he died, Amos made his way back to his homeland and was buried there. 8. From this God's omnipotence and divine judgment, Amos saw God as personally in control of all the world. Amos made clear that, contrary to the view within pagan religious and among the majority of Israelites, God was not only the God of Israel but of all the world. While the average Israelite may have remembered with national pride the special place of Israel's exodus from Egypt, Amos maintained that God was also behind the early movements of the Philistines and Arameans. Amos 9:7-9. Amos believed that God is Lord over all human history and that all men are equal in his sight. By this, he implies that any other nation could stand in the same place of privilege which Israel had known. Both God's concern in love and his concern in judgment are without discrimination. Neither geographical limitations nor race matter in the least when God seeks to accomplish his purpose. 9. No modern interpreter has denied that he taught that God is ethical to the extent that he cannot be affected by ceremonial as such. For Amos, religion consists not in ritual but in righteousness. YHWH, God of justice, demands right living, not oblations. 10. Amos thus proclaimed an ethical God so clearly that only ethical relations between men could assure divine favor, and nothing in his words indicates that he recognized any other approach to God. Such an approach naturally involves worship, a term that includes the whole process of man's communion with his God. Even in ancient Israel, worship was never confined to sacrifices and offerings, as witnessed Jacob at Bethel, Moses before the burning bush, Elijah on Mount Horeb. Man also has never failed to devise new forms of approach to God to accord with his changed conceptions of deity. 10. Teaching. Some of his main teachings are: prayers and sacrifices do not make up for bad deeds. Practice of religious acts is no insurance against the judgment of God, and that privilege involves opportunity, or escapism immunity cannot be claimed simply because of past favor of God.
I guess I'm a little confused at this part, because I thought back in the Old Testament, like if, for example, if the high priest would, slaughter the sheep and then beat it against the altar once a year, or do, what they did in the book of Leviticus, that those sins wouldn't be accounted for. But let's go ahead and continue. It takes a little while for it to
irrespective of deeds and the measure of faithful service. 9. Behaving justly is much more important than ritual. Amos 5:21-24. Ceremonial worship has no intrinsic value. The only genuine service of God consists in justice and righteousness. 5:24.
Okay.
11. Amos believed in economic justice. The conviction of Amos that economic justice was necessary to preserve the nation, whereas his opponents asserted that sacrifices and offerings were preserving it, forced him to conclude that a God who wanted a nation preserved must want justice and want it always, and could never therefore want sacrifices, which abetted and condoning justice. 10. Amos was an uncompromising monotheist. There is not a verse in his writing that admits the existence of other deities. 11. The relationship between the people of Israel is articulated to be a moral contract. If the people of Israel fall below the moral requirements of God, then their relationship will certainly be dissolved. Dependence on God is a requisite towards fulfillment. One will live if he seeks the Lord. Amos 5:4. Just change in interpretations. The ancient exhortation towards justice is expressed by the voice of God in Amos' teachings. Amos is told by God that the Israelites are going to face divine intervention as oppression was running rampant in Israel. God expressed this oppression by saying that the Israelites were practicing religiosity without righteousness. By oppressing the poor and failing to practice justice, the Israelites were behaving unrighteously. Justice was to be acted as a core of God's message in Amos' prophetic teachings. 12. Modern interpretations.
Okay, so going to the next part here, and it's actually only a couple more paragraphs it's actually about maybe 4 more paragraphs, modern interpretations of Amos for the introduction for this book.
Modern interpretations. Influences or references to Amos' teachings can be found in certain modern political and civil rights speeches. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, King states, "We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream," which is an allusion to Amos 5:24. But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. 13. Bernie Sanders also referenced Amos 5:24 in a speech during his 2016 presidential campaign. 14. It was used in a subtweet by James Comey after Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to FBI agents during the ongoing Trump-Russia scandal.
I don't know about that. Hold on. In a speech during his 2016 presidential campaign, it was used by a subtweet. It was used in a subtweet by James Comey after Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI during the ongoing Russia-Trump scandal. Okay, we're going to skip that part. Okay, continuing here.
Feast days to religious veneration. Within Roman, Byzantine, and other high liturgical churches, saints are regularly celebrated and venerated on feast days throughout the calendar year. This practice honors Christian martyrs on the traditional day of their death with facts about their life and insights attributed to them meant to edify the faithful. In the Eastern Orthodox liturgical calendar, Amos Feast Day is celebrated on June 15, 16, for those churches which follow the traditional Julian calendar. June 15th currently falls on June 28th of the modern Gregorian calendar. He is commemorated along with the other minor prophets in the calendar of saints of the Armenian Apostolic Church on July 31st. In the Eastern Church, the Tribarian of Amos is sung, celebrating the memory of your prophet Amos. O Lord, for his sake, we entreat you, save our souls. Reflecting Amos' sense of urgency and social justice, the Contagion of Amos is sung, purifying your fervent heart by the Spirit, O glorious prophet Amos, and receiving the gift of prophecy from on high, you cry with a loud voice to the nations, this is our God, and there is none beside him. 17.
Okay. Oops. So that was the introduction with some other points there. And now before we actually get into the actual book to read through, because the book only has about 5 chapters, we're going to go through the stuff that Rae sent me, and this is going to be a couple paragraphs here of things that she found in her biblical study books. So we're going to go ahead and go over that right now, starting off with Amos' synopsis and thoughts and stuff.
Amos synopsis and thoughts and stuff. Justice at the poor. Amos and Hosea go together in the same time period. Two views of the same time also reference 2 Kings 14:23-17:41. Amos is a foreigner who is sent by God to the Israelites. He is shocked by the injustice, the major theme of Amos. He is a poor farmer among a culture of Israelites that is prosperous. There is wealth because of greed, and taking from the poor and lack of giving to the poor. Bribes, corruption, extortion. People are living in excessive luxury. They falsely worship God only by mouth. When their hearts have made idols from their luxury and greed, they abandon the laws of Deuteronomy. The poor were devastatingly poor. They reject God. Hypocrites. Cold cows. God. Chapter 1. Till the Lord roars from Zion, and thunder from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds dry up, and the top of Carmel withers. God lion ready to pounce on his prey. Hates their worship. 5:18-21. Chapter 1. The judgment of the land. Social justice issues. Each was guilty of sin. The Lord says, Damascus, Gaza, Tyre, Edom, Ammon, Moab, Judah, Israel. Main points mostly. Broken covenant. Repent. If you don't, then God will judge. Bring the wrath. 3:1-4:13. A tiny bit glance of hope for Israel and nations at the end. The Messiah. CH 9:11-15. Personal thoughts. We live in very similar times. It is.
Okay, so that was basically her breakdown on the book of Amos, and now here's the personal thoughts, and then we'll get into reading the actual book. Most likely use New King James Version. Actually, I'll just pick a different version this time. Let's get a different understanding.
Okay, so I do apologize for the sounds that are going on in the background. It's because I'm just taking the time right now to clean, because I have not been able to clean for like a week now, and I basically was too sick to do any of this yesterday. So I do apologize if you hear things going on in the background. But
okay, I do apologize. I was having technical difficulties there. I actually recorded about 5 minutes for the second part, but I have to redo it now because of the website.
Oops. Sorry, having technical difficulties. Okay, let's restart this.
Okay, I do apologize. I was having technical difficulties there. I actually recorded about 5 minutes for the second part, but I have to redo it now because of the website. So let's go ahead and get into the personal thoughts one more time, and then we will get from the English Standard Version, Amos chapter 1 through chapter 5, and there are 9 chapters. So let's go ahead and get started.
Personal thoughts. We live in very similar times. It is very.
I do apologize. For some reason, the website is not allowing me to use the voice I was just using. So I have to use this new voice. So I do apologize for the inconvenience. Let's go ahead and get started.
We live in very similar times. It is very familiar with the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The rich, which are most of us, we live in excess and luxury. We prefer comfort and give out of abundance, not as a sacrifice. This God of wrath is still the same God. The only thing that keeps us from his wrath is Jesus. Lord, forgive me and teach me to be more generous and less selfish and comfortable. Chapter 5. We pray for the kingdom to come. We feel the aches of injustice. We desire righteousness, and the goodness of the Lord will in his ways. Jesus said in his ministry, Matthew 5:17, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Sometimes we want the end to come because we want his judgment so that others will be punished, but the picture in chapter 5 is that we should want Jesus for all because the Lord's wrath end. Judgment is unfathomable, and we too deserve the same judgment, except that we have an opportunity to be spared grace to surrender to Christ.
Okay, so that was the end of her notes and opinions on that. So let's go ahead and get started with Amos chapter 1 from the New English translation.
Amos 1. One, the words of Amos, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. 2. And he said, Jehovah will roar from Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the pastures of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. 3. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. 4. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, and it shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. 5. And I will break the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of Abain, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, said Jehovah. 6. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they carried away captive the whole people to deliver them up to Edom. 7. But I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, and it shall devour the palaces thereof. 8. And I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and him that holdeth the scepter from Ashkelon, and I will turn my hand against Ekron.
and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, saith the Lord Jehovah. 9. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Tyre, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they delivered up the whole people to Edom, and remembered not the brotherly covenant. 10. But I will send a fire on the wall of Tyre, and it shall devour the palaces thereof. 11. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Edom, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. 12. But I will send a fire upon Teman, and it shall devour the palaces of Bozrah. 13. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they may enlarge their border. 14. But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof with shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. 15. And their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes together, saith Jehovah. Top of page. Amos 2. 1. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Moab, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime. 2. But I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the palaces of Kerioth. And Moab shall die with tumult, with shouting, and with the sound of the trumpet. 3. And I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay all the princes thereof with him, saith Jehovah. 4. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Judah, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they have rejected the law of Jehovah, and have not kept his statutes, and their lies have caused them to err, after which their fathers did walk. 5. But I will send a fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem. 6. Thus saith Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Israel, yea, for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they have sold the righteous for silver, and the needy for a pair of shoes. 7. They that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father go unto him, saying, Maiden, to profane my holy name. 8. And they lay themselves down beside every altar upon clothes taken in pledge. And in the house of their God they drink the wine of such as have been fined. 9. Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath. 10. Also I brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years in the wilderness, to possess the land of the Amorite. 11. And I raised up of your sons for prophets, and of your young men for Nazirites. Is it not even thus, O ye children of Israel? Saith Jehovah. 12. But he gave the Nazirites wine to drink, and commanded the prophets, saying, Prophesy not. 13. Behold, I will press you in your place, as a cart presseth that is full of sheaves. 14. And flight shall perish from the swift, and the strong shall not strengthen his force, neither shall the mighty deliver himself. 15. Neither shall he stand that handleth the bow. And he that is swift of foot shall not deliver himself, neither shall he that rideth the horse deliver himself. 16. And he that is courageous among the mighty shall flee away naked in that day, saith Jehovah.
Okay, so that was the first 2 chapters of Amos. Going to chapter 3.
Amos 3. 1. Hear this word that Jehovah hath spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, 2 you only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will visit upon you all your iniquities. 3 shall 2 walk together, except they have agreed. 4 will a lion roar in the forest when he hath no prey? Will a young lion cry out of his den, if he have taken nothing? 5 Can a bird fall in a snare upon the earth, where no gin is set for him? Shall a snare spring up from the ground, and have taken nothing at all? 6 Shall the trumpet be blown in a city, and the people not be afraid? Shall evil befall a city, and Jehovah hath not done it? 7 Surely the Lord Jehovah will do nothing, except he reveal his secret unto his servants the prophets. 8 The lion hath roared, who will not fear? The Lord Jehovah hath spoken, who can but prophesy? 9 Publish ye in the palaces at Ashdod, and in the palaces in the land of Egypt, and say, Assemble yourselves upon the mountains of Samaria, and behold what great tumults are therein, and what oppressions in the midst thereof. 10 For they know not to do right, saith Jehovah, who store up violence and robbery in their palaces. 11 Therefore thus saith the Lord Jehovah, an adversary there shall be even round about the land, and he shall bring down thy strength from thee, and thy palaces shall be plundered. 12 Thus saith Jehovah, as the shepherd rescueth out of the mouth of the lion 2 legs, or a piece of an ear, so shall the children of Israel be rescued that sit in Samaria in the corner of a couch, and on the silken cushions of a bed. 13 Hear ye, and testify against the house of Jacob, saith the Lord Jehovah, the God of hosts. 14 For in the day that I shall visit the transgressions of Israel upon him, I will also visit the altars of Bethel, and the horns of the altar shall be cut off, and fall to the ground. 15 And I will smite the winter house with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall have an end, saith Jehovah. Top of page. Amos 4. 1 Hear this word, ye kind of Bashan, that are in the mountain of Samaria, that oppress the poor, that crush the needy, that say unto their lords, Bring, and let us drink. 2 The Lord Jehovah hath sworn by his holiness that, lo, the days shall come upon you, that they shall take you away with hooks, and your residue with fish hooks. 3 And ye shall go out at the breaches, every one straight before her, and ye shall cast yourselves into Harmon, saith Jehovah. 4 Come to Bethel, and transgress to Gilgal, and multiply transgression, and bring your sacrifices every morning, and your tithes every 3 days. 5 And offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving of that which is leavened, and proclaim freewill offerings, and publish them, for this pleaseth you, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord Jehovah. 6 And I also have given you cleanness of teeth in all your cities, and want of bread in all your places, yet have ye not returned unto me, saith Jehovah. 7 And I also have withholden the rain from you, when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. And I caused it to rain upon one city, and caused it not to rain upon another city. One piece was rained upon, and the piece whereupon it rained not withered. 8 So 2 or 3 cities wandered unto one city to drink water, and were not satisfied, yet have ye not returned unto me, saith Jehovah. 9 I have smitten you with blasting and mildew, the multitude of your gardens and your vineyards and your fig trees and your olive trees hath the palmer worm devoured. Yet have ye not returned unto me, saith Jehovah. 10 I have sent among you the pestilence after the manner of Egypt, your young men have I slain with the sword, and have carried away your horses. And I have made the stench of your camp to come up even into your nostrils, yet have ye not returned unto me, saith Jehovah. 11 I have overthrown I among you, as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and ye were as a brand plucked out of the burning, yet have ye not returned unto me, saith Jehovah. 12 Therefore thus will I do unto thee, O Israel, and because I will do this unto thee, prepare to meet thy God, O Israel. 13 For, lo, he that formeth the mountains, and createth the wind, and declareth unto man what is his thought. That maketh the morning darkness, and treadeth upon the high places of the earth. Jehovah, the God of hosts, is his name.
Okay. That was chapters 3 and 4. Now let's go to chapter 5, and then we will go through 6, from 6 to 9.
Amos 5. Hear ye this word which I take up for a lamentation over you, O house of Israel. To the virgin of Israel is fallen, she shall no more rise, she is cast down upon her land, there is none to raise her up. 3 For thus saith the Lord Jehovah, the city that went forth 1,000 shall have 100 left, and that which went forth 100 shall have 10 left to the house of Israel. 4 For thus saith Jehovah unto the house of Israel, seek ye me, and ye shall live. 5 But seek not Bethel, nor enter into Gilgal, and pass not to Beersheba, for Gilgal shall surely go into captivity, and Bethel shall come to naught. 6 Seek Jehovah, and ye shall live, lest he break out like fire in the house of Joseph, and it devour, and there be none to quench it in Bethel. 7 Ye who turn justice to wormwood, and cast down righteousness to the earth. 8 Seek him, that maketh the Pleiades and Orion, and turneth the shadow of death into the morning. And maketh the day dark with night, that calleth for the waters of the sea, and poureth them out upon the face of the earth. Jehovah is his name. 9 That bringeth sudden destruction upon the strong, so that destruction cometh upon the fortress. 10 They hate him that reproveth in the gate, and they abhor him that speaketh uprightly. 11 For as much therefore as ye trample upon the poor, and take exactions from him of wheat, ye have built houses of hewn stone, but ye shall not dwell in them. Ye have planted pleasant vineyards, but ye shall not drink the wine thereof. 12 For I know how manifold are your transgressions, and how mighty are your sins, ye that afflict the just, that take a bribe, and that turn aside the needy and the gate from their right. 13 Therefore he that is prudent shall keep silence in such a time, for it is an evil time. 14 Seek good, and not evil, that ye may live, and so Jehovah, the God of hosts, will be with you, as ye say. 15 Hate the evil, and love the good, and establish justice in the gate. It may be that Jehovah, the God of hosts, will be gracious unto the remnant of Joseph. 16 Therefore thus saith Jehovah, the God of hosts, the Lord, wailing shall be in all the broad ways, and they shall say in all the streets, Alas! Alas! And they shall call the husbandman to mourning, and such as are skillful in lamentation to wailing. 17 And in all vineyards shall be wailing, for I will pass through the midst of thee, saith Jehovah. 18 Woe unto you that desire the day of Jehovah. Wherefore would ye have the day of Jehovah? It is darkness, and not light. 19 As if a man did flee from a lion, and a bear met him, or went into the house and leaned his hand on the wall, and a serpent bit him. 20 Shall not the day of Jehovah be darkness, and not light? Even very dark, and no brightness in it. 21 I despise your feasts, and I will take no delight in your solemn assemblies. 22 Yea, though ye offer me your burnt offerings and meal offerings, I will not accept them, neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. 23 Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. 24 But let justice roll down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream.
Hold on, I just want to look up the word vials. I'm not sure what this means. VIOLS. A musical instrument of the Renaissance and Baroque periods, typically 6-string, strings held vertically and played with a bow. Okay, that's okay. I don't know what that instrument is. Okay. Okay, continuing here with one more paragraph from verse 24 to 27.
24 But let justice roll down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream. 25 Did ye bring unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel? 26 Yea, ye have borne the tabernacle of your king and the shrine of your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. 27 Therefore will I cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, said Jehovah, whose name is the God of hosts.
Okay. Now we're going to be going to chapter 6 through chapter 9. Once again, this is the Standard American Edition. So Amos 6 to 9. Let's start.
Amos 6. One woe to them that are at ease in Zion, and to them that are secure in the mountain of Samaria, the notable men of the chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel come. To pass ye unto Calneh, and see, from thence go ye to Hamath the great, then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Are they better than these kingdoms? Or is their border greater than your border? 3 Ye that put far away the evil day, and cause the seed of violence to come near. 4 That lie upon beds of ivory, and stretch themselves upon their couches, and eat the lambs out of the flock, and the calves out of the midst of the stall. 5 That sing idle songs to the sound of the viol, that invent for themselves instruments of music, like David. 6 That drink wine in bowls, and anoint themselves with the cheap oils. But they are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. 7 Therefore shall they now go captive with the first that go captive, and the revelry of them that stretch themselves shall pass away. 8 The Lord Jehovah hath sworn by himself, said Jehovah, the God of hosts, I abhor the excellency of Jacob, and hate his palaces, therefore will I deliver up the city with all that is therein. 9 And it shall come to pass, if there remain 10 men in one house, that they shall die. 10 And when a man's uncle shall take him up, even he that burneth him, to bring out the bones out of the house, and shall say unto him that is in the innermost parts of the house, Is there yet any with thee? And he shall say, No. Then shall he say, Hold thy peace, for we may not make mention of the name of Jehovah. 11 For behold, Jehovah commendeth, and the great house shall be smitten with breaches, and the little house with clefts. 12 Shall horses run upon the rock? Will one plow there with oxen? That ye have turned justice into gall, and the fruit of righteousness into wormwood. 13 Ye that rejoice in the thing of naught, that say, Have we not taken to us horns by our own strength? 14 For behold, I will raise up against you a nation, O house of Israel, said Jehovah, the God of hosts, and they shall afflict you from the entrance of Hamath unto the brook of the Arba. Top of page. Amos 7. 1 Thus the Lord Jehovah showed me, and behold, he formed locusts in the beginning of the shooting up of the latter growth, and lo, it was the latter growth after the king's mowings. 2 And it came to pass that, when they made an end of eating the grass of the land, then I said, O Lord Jehovah, forgive, I beseech thee, how shall Jacob stand? For he is small. 3 Jehovah repented concerning this, it shall not be, said Jehovah.
Okay. So actually it looks like it's the same thing that was one of the plagues in the book of Exodus, but let's go ahead and wrap this up to get to part 3. So I will be right back.
Okay, so that was part 2. Now we're going to part 3 for Amos. And this is the part where I go through the rest of the book. And then we start commentary on Vernon McGee from his Bible study that he made. So let's go ahead and start that part.
Okay. So now starting part 3. This is the last half of Amos 7.
For thus the Lord Jehovah showed me, and behold, the Lord Jehovah called to content by fire, and it devoured the great deep, and would have eaten up the land. 5 Then said I, O Lord Jehovah, cease, I beseech thee, how shall Jacob stand? For he is small. 6 Jehovah repented concerning this also shall not be, saith the Lord Jehovah. 7 Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood beside a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. 8 And Jehovah said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A plumb line. Then said the Lord, Behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel, I will not again pass by them any more. 9 And the high places of Isaac shall be desolate, and the sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste, and I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. 10 Then Amaziah the priest of Bethel sent to Jeroboam king of Israel, saying, Amos hath conspired against thee in the midst of the house of Israel, the land is not able to bear all his words. 11 For thus Amos saith, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel shall surely be led away captive out of his land. 12 Also Amaziah said unto Amos, O thou seer, go, flee thou away into the land of Judah, and there eat bread, and prophesy there. 13 But prophesy not again any more at Bethel. For it is the king's sanctuary, and it is a royal house. 14 Then answered Amos, and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son. But I was a herdsman, and a dresser of sycamore trees. 15 And Jehovah took me from following the flock, and Jehovah said unto me, Go, prophesy unto my people Israel. 16 Now therefore hear thou the word of Jehovah, thou sayest, Prophesy not against Israel, and drop not thy word against the house of Isaac. 17 Therefore thus said Jehovah, Thy wife shall be a harlot in the city, and thy sons and thy daughters shall fall by the sword, and thy land shall be divided by line. And thou thyself shalt die in a land that is unclean, and Israel shall surely be led away captive out of his land. Top of page. Amos 8. 1 Thus the Lord Jehovah showed me, and behold, a basket of summer fruit. 2 And he said, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A basket of summer fruit. Then said Jehovah unto me, The end is come upon my people Israel, I will not again pass by them any more. 3 And the songs of the temple shall be wailings in that day, saith the Lord Jehovah, the dead bodies shall be many, in every place shall they cast them forth with silence. 4 Hear this, O ye that would swallow up the needy, and cause the poor of the land to fail. 5 Saying, When will the new moon be gone, that we may sell grain? And the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small, and the shekel great, and dealing falsely with balances of deceit. 6 That we may buy the poor for silver, and the needy for a pair of shoes, and sell the refuse of the wheat. 7 Jehovah hath sworn by the excellency of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their works. 8 Shall not the land tremble for this, and every one more that dwelleth therein? Yea, it shall rise up wholly like the river, and it shall be troubled and sink again, like the river of Egypt. 9 And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord Jehovah, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in the clear day. 10 And I will turn your feasts into mourning, and all your songs into lamentation, and I will bring sackcloth upon all loins, and baldness upon every head. And I will make it as the morning for an only son, and the end thereof is a bitter day. 11 Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Jehovah, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Jehovah. 12 And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east, they shall run to and fro to seek the word of Jehovah, and shall not find it. 13 In that day shall the fair virgins and the young men faint for thirst. 14 They that swear by the sin of Samaria, and say, As thy God, O Dan, liveth, and as the way of Beersheba.
I don't know why it's pronouncing that word like that. It's Samaria. It's not San Maria, it's Samaria. Anyways, let's continue.
Samaria, and say, As thy God, O Dan, liveth, and as the way of Beersheba liveth, they shall fall, and never rise up again. Top of page. Amos 9.
Okay, so we're actually starting the last chapter, and this one's pretty quick too. And then what I'm going to do before ending this episode on this is on ttb.org. I did find study notes on the book of Isaiah, or not Isaiah, Amos. Notes from someone named Rae Vernon. So we'll go ahead and go over this also, and then end the episode.
Amos 9. One I saw the Lord standing beside the altar, and he said, Smite the capitals, that the thresholds may shake, and break them in pieces on the head of all of them. And I will slay the last of them with the sword, there shall not one of them flee away, and there shall not one of them escape. 2 Though they dig into Sheol, thence shall my hand take them, and though they climb up to heaven, thence will I bring them down. 3 And though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, I will search and take them out thence. And though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea, thence will I command the serpent, and it shall bite them. 4 And though they go into captivity before their enemies, thence will I command the sword, and it shall slay them, and I will set mine eyes upon them for evil, and not for good. 5 For the Lord Jehovah of hosts, he that toucheth the land, and it melteth, and all that dwell therein shall mourn. And it shall rise up wholly like the river, and shall sink again, like the river of Egypt. 6 It is he that buildeth his chambers in the heavens, and hath founded his vault upon the earth. He that calleth for the waters of the sea, and poureth them out upon the face of the earth, Jehovah is his name. 7 Are ye not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? Saith Jehovah, have not I brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Captor, and the Syrians from Kir? 8 Behold, the eyes of the Lord Jehovah are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from off the face of the earth, save that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith Jehovah. 9 For, lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all the nations, like as I is sifted in a sift, yet shall not the least kernel fall upon the earth. 10 All the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, who say, The evil shall not overtake nor meet us. 11 In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and I will raise up its ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. 12 That they may possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations that are called by my name, saith Jehovah that doth this. 13 Behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him that soweth seed. And the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. 14 And I will bring back the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities, and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards, and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens, and eat the fruit of them. 15 And I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be plucked up out of their land which I have given them, saith Jehovah thy God.
Okay, so that is the entire book of Amos. And now I will be going through the study notes for the book of Amos, and this is a Amos study guide from ttb.org. So let's go ahead and get started with that.
The most prophetic ministry took place during the reigns of Jeroboam II, king of Israel, and Uzziah, king of Judah. He was contemporary with Jonah and Hosea, who were prophets in the northern kingdom of Israel, and with Isaiah and Micah, who were prophets in the southern kingdom of Judah.
So basically what Ray went over in the email, but I'm just getting the information like from a second source, just to see if I can get more information from this about this book.
Amos presents God as the ruler of this world and declares that all nations are responsible to him. The measure of a nation's responsibility is the light which a nation has. The final test for any nation or individual is found in Amos 3:3. Can two walk together, except they be agreed? In a day of prosperity, Amos pronounced punishment. The judgment of God awaited nations which were living in luxury and lolling in immorality. Amos is, in my words, the country preacher who came to town. I want us to get acquainted with him personally. Because to get acquainted with Amos is to love him and to understand his prophecy better. We will find that he was born in Judah, the southern kingdom, but he was a prophet to the northern kingdom. His message was delivered in Bethel at the king's chapel. It was most unusual for a man to have come from such a country, out-of-the-way place with a message of judgment against all of the surrounding nations. Amos had a global view of life and of God's program for the entire world, not only for the present but also for the future. All this makes this man a most remarkable prophet. In Amos 1:1 we read, the words of Amos, who was among the herdmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash king of Israel. 2 years before the earthquake, Tekoa was Amos' birthplace and his hometown. 6 miles south of Jerusalem there is the familiar little place of Bethlehem, of which the prophet Micah said, But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Mike. Bethlehem has become famous, but there was another little place that was another 6 miles southeast of Bethlehem called Tekoa, which is not so well known. In fact, Amos himself is not even mentioned anywhere else in the Old Testament. There is an Amos in Mary's genealogy given in the Gospel of Luke, but he is no relation to the prophet Amos. And the little town of Tekoa from which he came is practically an unknown place. It is the place where a prophetess came and gave David a message. See 2 Sam 14.
It says in Samuel chapter 14, and it's Tekoa, Tekoa. So I don't understand why this text-to-speech thing is pronouncing certain words oddly, but let's continue.
Tekoa from which he came is practically an unknown place. It is the place where a prophetess came and gave David a message. See 2 Sam
2 Samuel 14.
David was familiar with this area because it was the area to which he fled to hide from King Saul. Tekoa is located on a hilly ridge which overlooks a frightful desert wilderness that continues down to the very edge of the Dead Sea. Wild animals howl by night, and by day the only thing you can see are spots here and there which indicate the remains of the camps of the Bedouin. There is nothing but the blackened ground left by these nomads and vagabonds of the desert who moved through that area. Dr. Adam Smith said, the men of Tekoa look out upon a desolate and haggard world. Today the nation Israel has constructed a modern highway along the Dead Sea that leads to Masada. The highway comes back through Arid and up through Hebron and Bethlehem, but it never gets near Tekoa because Tekoa is over in that wilderness. I'm sure most of you have never heard of it, for even in its heyday, Tekoa was never more than a wide place in the road. It was a whistle stop, a jumping off place.
Okay, so it's like the equivalent of where Jesus was born at. Okay, I see. Like in the middle of nowhere.
The name Tekoa means a camping ground. It was really only a country crossroads out on the frontier. Years ago I heard a man say that to reach the place where he was born, you go as far as possible by buggy and then you get off and walk 2 miles. Tekoa was that sort of place, and it was the birthplace of Amos that is its only claim to greatness. We need to turn to chapter 7 to get a little personal insight into this man and his ministry in Samaria, the northern kingdom of Israel. There we read, Then Amaziah the priest of Bethel sent to Jeroboam king of Israel, saying, Amos hath conspired against thee in the midst of the house of Israel. The land is not able to bear all his words. For thus Amos saith, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel shall surely be led away captive out of their own land. Also Amaziah said unto Amos, O thou seer, go, flee thee away into the land of Judah, and there eat bread, and prophesy there, but prophesy not again any more at Bethel. For it is the king's chapel, and it is the king's court. Then answered Amos, and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son. But I was an herdman, and a gatherer of sycamore fruit, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto me, Go, prophesy unto my people Israel. Amos 7:10-15. Amos tells us he was a herdman. An unusual word is used here which means that he was the herdsman of a peculiar breed of desert sheep. They were a scrub stock, but they grew long wool because of the cold in the wintertime. He also says that he was a gatherer of sycamore fruit. The literal is a pincher of sycamores. This was a fruit like a small fig which grew on scrub trees down in the desert. These trees grew at a lower level than the sycamore that we know today. We can see, then, that Amos had to travel to his job. He was a migrant worker, if you please. His sheep and his sycamores pushed Amos far out into that desert. He was truly a farmer, he was a country root. He was a rustic, he was a yokel and a hayseed. He was a country preacher, he was a clumsy bumpkin who was, all thumbs, among the ecumenical preachers up yonder in Bethel. But before you laugh at Amos, may I say this? He was one of God's greatest men, and he was a remarkable individual. Listen to what Amos says, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto
Well, the whole country bumpkin, and he was a clumsy man, like all these things. I understand that this person who wrote this is just trying to paint a picture, but it doesn't necessarily mean that basically just stating this guy was an idiot, but he was so called by God. I don't agree with that. But anyways, let's continue.
But before you laugh at Amos, may I say this? He was one of God's greatest men, and he was a remarkable individual. Listen to what Amos says, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto me, Go, prophesy unto my people Israel. Amos 7:15. God sent Amos all the way from down there in the desert and the wilderness up to Bethel, one of the capital cities of the northern kingdom, where he found city folk living. God called him to preach, God gave him a message, and God sent him to Bethel. Bethel was, at first, the capital of the northern kingdom, and it was the place where Jeroboam had erected one of his golden calves. It was the center of culture and also of cults. The people worshipped that golden calf and had turned their backs upon Almighty God. Bethel was where the sophisticated and the suave folk moved, the jet set lived there. It was a place that was blasé and brazen. It was also the intellectual center. They had a school of prophets there. The seminaries taught liberalism. They would have taught the Graf-Wellhausen hypothesis, which denies the inspiration of the Pentateuch, and gone in for all the latest theories of a theologian like Rudolf Bultmann. What was done in Bethel was the thing to do. When filter-tipped cigarettes were introduced, Bethel was the first place they were advertised and used, and from there they spread everywhere. It was the place where you could see the styles which would be popular the next year.
What was that last part?
Are we going to wear the wider lapel next year? Will there be 2 or 3 buttons on the suit coat? Should you leave the last button unbuttoned to be in style? Well, you would go to Bethel to find out all that.
Oh, I see.
Then here comes to town this country preacher.
Okay, so yeah, the person is just trying to paint a picture, and speaking of liberalism and things like that, that's actually not, I guess from a historical perspective, you could say that that would be correct, but it's not stated in the book of Amos. So we have to be, from this website, I understand that this person is just trying to paint a picture, but you got to be really careful with things like this. Oh, okay, we're going to end part 3 right now and go to part 4.
Okay, now the last part where I go over more of that.
Okay, now continuing with the last parts of the book of Amos video. Continuing. I apologize, it takes a second for us.
Then here comes to town this country preacher, this prophet of God with a message, a most unusual message, different from any other prophet. The most suit of clothes was not cut to the style of Bethel, and neither was his message. He did not give the type of messages they were used to hearing. In the King's Chapel there was always a mild-mannered preacher, very sophisticated and well-educated, but a rank unbeliever who stood in the pulpit giving comforting little words to the people. He gave them pabulum, saccharine sweetness was his message. But now here's a different kind of man. When Amos first arrived, people stared at him. But they were very indulgent, of course they were broad-minded, so they smiled at him. I think he had on high-buttoned yellow shoes which were not in style that year, and his suit probably didn't fit him and was...
Okay, we're going to skip this part of talking about culture and how this man obviously didn't fit in with them. It's completely unnecessary. I don't know if this person tried to make a joke. It's unnecessary. Let's go to the next paragraph.
I think almost everyone came to hear him at first. They said, "We don't believe he can preach." They came out of curiosity, saying, "We don't think this man has any message." They came in amusement, but they left in anger. He was a sensational preacher, for his sermons weren't cut to the style of Bethel. However, today we do not have any record of the liberal sermons of that day, but we certainly have the sermons and the prophecy of Amos. Amos preached the word of God. Many people were moved, and some turned to God, but he disturbed the liberal element. Organized religion in Bethel, the worship of Baal and of the golden calf got together. They had the ecumenical movement going there, so they had the same program. If you don't believe anything, my friend, there is nothing to keep you apart. If I don't believe anything and you don't believe anything, we can get together. That is the ecumenical movement, and it was going great guns even in that day. Amos was in the midst of all this organized religion which was plotting against him to silence him and to run him out of town. Some of the leading ecumenical leaders called a meeting. They wanted to remove Amos, they wanted to withdraw support from him, they told him he'd lose his pension if he didn't change his message. There were also some fundamental leaders called evangelicals in Bethel who began to criticize him because he was drawing the crowds. They tried to undermine his ministry. But God blessed him, and Amos would not compromise but continued to preach the word of God. They had a mass meeting of all the religions in Bethel. It was really the first meeting of the World Council of Churches, and the motto of this first meeting was, "Away with Amos." Away with Amos, and the inevitable happened at this meeting. They appointed a committee chairman, Amaziah, to go and confront Amos. Amaziah was a priest who had gone into idolatry. Does all of this sound modern to you? It's the same old story. We think it's modern, but this sort of thing has been happening ever since man got out of the Garden of Eden. Amaziah was the hired hand of religion. He was polished, he was educated, he was proud, he was scholarly, he was pious, and he was a classic example of a pseudo-saint. Cleverly and subtly, Amaziah worked a masterstroke. He went to Jeroboam too and poisoned his mind against Amos. Amaziah got the king to support him because he believed that the church and state, religion and politics should be combined. This is what happened.
These things are not talked about, though, in the book of Amos, so I don't know if this person, again, is trying to paint a picture as to what he or she, well, it says J. Vernon, that of what he thought happened. I don't know, maybe if this person's a historian on biblical texts, but none of this is in the book of Amos. Let's continue here. I might just scrap this whole thing. I don't know.
This is what happened. Then Amaziah the priest of Bethel sent to Jeroboam king of Israel, saying, Amos hath conspired against thee in the midst of the house of Israel. The land is not able to bear all his words. For thus Amos saith, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel shall surely be led away captive out of their own land. Amos 7:10-11. Let me ask you, friend, is that what Amos said? No, he had not said that. His actual words were that God had said, I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. Amos 7:9. If you follow the record, you will find that Amos' pronouncement was accurate. It is too bad that Jeroboam too did not believe Amos, because his grandson was later slain with the sword, thus ending his kingly line. It was true that Amos had said something about the sword and about Jeroboam, but he had not said that Jeroboam personally would die by the sword. Amaziah was an ecclesiastical politician who was twisting the truth, and that is the worst kind of lying. I think Amaziah had two other men on his committee when he went to see Amos. There was Dr. Sounding Brass, president of the School of Prophets, False Prophets, by the way. Proud and pompous, he was a politician par excellence. There was also Reverend Tinkling Cymbal. He was the pastor of the wealthiest and most influential church in town. He was the man to the rich. He couldn't preach, but he was a great little mixer. It is amazing the things he could mix, by the way. He didn't pound the pulpit because he didn't want to wake up his congregation, but he could sure slap their backs during the week. This is the committee which waited upon Amos. Amaziah, with biting sarcasm, with a rapier of ridicule, and with a condescending manner, said to Amos, O thou seer, in other words, he's calling him parson. Also Amaziah said unto Amos, O thou seer, go, flee thee away into the land of Judah, and there eat bread, and prophesy there. Amos 7:12. In effect, Amaziah said to Amos, who told you that you were a preacher? Where is your degree? What school did you go to? Who ordained you? Where did you preach before you came here? Go, flee away. In other words, he's saying to him, get out of town. Get lost. Then Amaziah adds, and there eat bread. He is insinuating to Amos, you're just in it for the money, and therefore we don't want you here. Verse 13 is the crowning insult of all, but prophesy not again any more at Bethel, for it is the king's chapel, and it is the king's court. Amos 7:13. That is the height of Amaziah's insolence and his arrogance. He uses here a satire that is not only biting but also poisonous. He says in effect, remember, you've been speaking in the leading church here in Bethel, the king's chapel. You have been in the king's sanctuary, and he's dissatisfied with you.
Okay, so this person obviously is painting a story. Whoever wrote this, J. Vernon, is just adding things to the book and also using symbols of doctor this and doctor that, of whimsy, thimble, and things like. Okay, so go ahead and just take. Okay, so this was written in 1991, Nashville, Tennessee. Thomas Nelson, publisher. Oh, Vernon McGee. Okay, Bible commentary on this. Okay, so that. Guys, go ahead and just take this with a grain of salt. I mean, these things are not in the book of Amos. We don't exactly know. I mean, there are little things in there. I also talked about what we went over, which is talked about in the book of First Kings. So there's actually not that much information about Amos. So what this person is doing, Vernon McGee, is just throwing in extra things. But let's go ahead and continue with it.
Your message disturbs him. In fact, there are a lot of people who do not like you. You don't use a very diplomatic method. You don't pat them on the back and tell them how wonderful they are. You do not patronize the rich and the affluent. And you're not very reverent. You tell funny stories every now and then. You're not dignified, you pound the pulpit, and you lack graceful gestures. You do not use a basso profundo voice as if you were thundering out of heaven. What you need is a course in homiletics. And you don't seem to have read the latest books. By the way, have you read the latest Ball Goes to Yale? And, of course, poor Amos hadn't read the latest book. I want you to listen to the answer that this great prophet of God gave this man who preached the righteousness of God and the judgment of God. There are those who like to call him a hellfire prophet, but will you listen to his answer and notice how gracious it really is? Then answered Amos, and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son. But I was an herdman, and a gatherer of sycamore fruit, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto me, Go, prophesy unto my people Israel. Amos 7:14-15.
Okay, I see here. This person is filling in gaps as to what he thinks the dialogue was back then. Okay, all right, I see what's going on.
And then Amos continued with his message, in which he has some pretty harsh words to say to this man Amaziah. Now I ask you a fair question. Does his answer sound like that of a fanatic? Frankly, I have one criticism of Amos. He is too naive, he's rather artless, he's rather simple. Down in the desert of Tico, he knew his way around. He could avoid the dangers in that howling wilderness which was filled with wild beasts, but in the asphalt jungle of Bethel, he was rather helpless. By the way, there is a jungle today in this world. You will find that in church circles and liberal churches and even in fundamental churches it's a little dangerous. You're not really safe because there is often someone who will want to tear you to pieces. There will be the roar of some big lion, such as Mr. Godrox, who is on the board of deacons.
God rocks.
I tell you, you had to pat him on the back. You had better play up to him, or else he may give you real trouble. There is also the hiss of a serpent in the asphalt jungle today. Mrs. Joe Dokes, who has a poison tongue.
Joe
James, in his
Dokes?
epistle, talked about those who have poison under their lips. See James 3:8. It is worse than a rattlesnake bite to have some of these folk criticize you. This man Amos is very naive. He says, You say that I'm no preacher. I know it, I'm no preacher, and you say I'm not a prophet.
Also, what this person is doing, Vernon McGee, is also comparing liberals to like modern day liberals, like of churches like Remnant or eminent churches like Rob Bell and stuff, comparing them to, I'm assuming the epicenter that Amos was going up against when the Lord called him. I mean, I'm not saying that that's incorrect, but you can't really go ahead and just take this with a grain of salt because it's unnecessary. But let's go ahead and continue.
You're right, I'm no prophet. I'm not even a prophet's son. I'm a country boy, but God called me, listen to him, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto me, Go, prophesy unto my people Israel. Amos 7:15, italics mine. Amos says, You want my credentials. Here they are, God called me. May I say to you, if you give out the word of God today, you are going to be challenged. I recently received a letter from a man in Salt Lake City, Utah, which presents a very devious argument. He concludes by saying, I am interested in knowing how you got your authority. I can answer that very easily. When I was in my teens, God called me, and I knew he called me. Maybe you think that was because I had great faith. No, as a poor boy, I didn't even have enough faith to believe that the Lord would get me through school. I'll be very frank with you, I had no faith at all.
Okay, this is not necessary, and that doesn't have to do with the book of Amos. So let's go to the last two paragraphs.
Amos was God's man giving God's message. Simply because Israel was being religious on the surface did not guarantee that God would not judge their sin. Because of their rejection of his law, their deceit and robbery and violence and oppression of the poor, God said, I despise your feast days. Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs. But let judgment run down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream. Amos 5:21-24. It was a day of false peace. In the north was Assyria hanging like the sword of Damocles ready to fall, and in the next half century it would destroy this little kingdom. Israel was trying to ignore it, and they kept talking about peace. But Amos said, Behold, the eyes of the Lord God are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from off the face of the earth. Amos 9:8. His message was not a popular message. He warned that it was God's intention to punish sin. McGee, J. Vernon, Through the Bible Commentary, Volume 20, Amos and Obadiah, Nashville, Tennessee, Thomas Nelson Publishers, 1991.
Okay, so, I mean, a lot of that was just this teacher's personal flavor in that, where, like, I don't really understand what the point of bringing up liberal-esque churches like nowadays in 2019 had to do with that, because we don't, other than when the priests and prophets and whatnot of Israel were the only thing we really know about the fact that, let alone that it was even an epicenter, we don't really know that either, but just the fact that they were just worshiping golden calves and that they bow down to idol worship. That's pretty much all Amos says. So I really don't understand what the Vernon McGee's like study breakdown of Amos was there, like what the point of that was, and he was just filling in gaps. But anyways, like Ray's, the one that she sent, is much more cohesive, much more understandable than she talked about just the Book of Amos. So anyways, it's much better than Vernon McGee's. But anyway, so that was the video. I do apologize. I've been sick for the last couple days, and I think I'm finally getting over my illness because I wasn't able to talk yesterday until nighttime. But anyways, that was the Book of Amos, and I wanted to go down my list, and Amos was the next one for the list I have on my wall of going through all books, all 66 books of the Bible, plus Apocrypha books. And I'm also going to be starting study videos on Apocrypha books and all the ones that I can get my hands on, and then try to explain to you guys why they weren't placed in the Bible, not considered holy books. So, I mean, I can understand for Amos that where Jeroboam II and whomever was working with him could have been asking him, what kind of degrees do you have? Like, who are you to tell me this from God when you're just some sheep herder? So I can understand. I mean, I can understand filling in the gaps there because he said it was God that called me to come down. It also talks about in the New Testament that, that he will use small little people for his will to get to the ones who are big and arrogant. So I do understand that. And it does talk a lot about judgment, which is something I was talking about last night with my girlfriend on things of basically the day of the Lord and the day of judgment, and that all the wickedness and unrighteous people that, have never accepted Christ and just wanted to do whatever they want to do are going to pay the ultimate price. So anyways, that's just a couple of my thoughts there. I hope you guys, it was the Book of Amos, once again, from the Old Testament. That was also quoted by Isaiah, and also said Bernie Sanders and Martin Luther King. So anyway.
Okay. So that was the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it for the entire Book of Amos. This is Pastor Sean, and God bless. And